Hey guys, this is Robbie with Wheaton Arms. Today we're going to walk you through the installation process of the new Wheaton Arms flat face trigger. Alright guys, before we get started, there's a few things that we need to do with our pistol to make sure that it's safe before we start the disassembly process. So the first thing we're going to do, take the magazine out of the pistol. We're going to rack the slide to the rear. We're going to check the chamber to make sure there's not a round in the chamber. Once we've ensured that the pistol is completely unloaded and there's no ammunition in it, the magazine's removed, the next thing we're going to do is pull the takedown lever down, pull the trigger, and take the slide assembly off of the frame. So as you can see, now we have the slide separated from the frame. Now we're going to walk through the disassembly process of the frame itself. So first, we'll remove the top pin here. All of these pins will come out from the left to the right. Next, we'll remove our ejector housing pin. And last, our trigger pin. And the easy way that I've found to do this is just kind of lift up on your slide stop and wiggle it back and forth as you're pushing in on the pin. You can see it just pops right through, drops right out on the table. So now that we have that pin out, now we're going to remove our locking block here. That's out. Our slide stop. And now we'll pull our entire trigger assembly, our stock trigger assembly, out of the pistol. Alright guys, so you can see here we've got our trigger assembly. So now we're going to disassemble this. Trigger assembly comes out. And again, I'll show it from a little different angle. From the top, you can see your crucifix here is hooked in on the side of your ejector housing on the left, and then also under your connector on the right. So what we do is just kind of pull forward and lift that whole assembly out. Now we've got our trigger return spring that's attached to our trigger here. So we'll just unhook that. Now we have our old trigger off. And we'll take our new Wheaton Arms trigger. Again, you can see try and get a good picture here. The opening to your hook is facing up, and it falls off. And if that happens, to put it back on your ejector housing, the hook goes down through the hole and rolls around into place. And again, you've got a hole here on your trigger bar. Just hook your spring into the back, rock the entire assembly forward. Now that we've got it to this point, we're going to put a little bit of grease on our connector here, and a little grease on the inside of our trigger bar and here. Again, just any contact surfaces where you have metal on metal contact. And this is just going to help everything feel a lot smoother once you reassemble your pistol. And we like to use the Lucas products for our grease. They work really well. Alright, so now we have that. We're going to take our trigger assembly. We're going to drop the entire assembly into our frame. Reassembly process is just like disassembly. We'll put our locking block here back into the frame. That's going to go here right on top of the trigger. Next, we'll put our ejector housing pin in back here. Again, everything, I always try and go left to right on these. It's just easier for me. I'm left-handed, so it's just my personal preference. Again, with your top pin here, slide that one in. And then last, we're going to put in our slide stop, slide release. And with this one I go backwards. I go right to left just because of the detents in the pin here. You don't have to worry about it catching on anything. And those parts will There it goes. And so that's all back together. And there's your trigger installed in your frame. Next we'll install our slide. Everything working as it's supposed to. So now that we have everything reassembled with our Glock pistol, there's a few safety checks that we need to do. The first safety check is your trigger safety, to make sure that the safety is actually engaging the frame and doesn't pull through. So all you do is grab the sides of your trigger like this, pull the trigger to the rear, and make sure that the safety engages the frame, the trigger safety engages the frame, and the trigger doesn't fall. Our next safety check is going to be to pull the trigger and make sure that you have some pre-travel. You want about an 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch of pre-travel here. So what that is going to do is allow your striker safety plunger to function properly. If the trigger is pinned all the way back like this and there's no pre-travel whatsoever, then your striker safety plunger is already engaged and that safety has been deactivated. So you want to make sure that you have a little bit of pre-travel here, and that pre-travel is going to allow your striker safety plunger to work properly. The last check we want to make is with our crucible here and with our striker here. You want to check the engagement with the firearm assembled between the crucible and the striker. And that engagement should be back here on the rear. You want to make sure that you've got about 70% engagement between your hook on your striker and the back of your crucible here. So any less than that and you could potentially have a slam fire when you drop the slide. The striker could slip off of the crucible and the pistol could potentially fire. And the easy way to check that is with a cut back plate, so you can look inside of the pistol. And what you want to look for is back here your striker, and then under that the crucible, and you want to make sure, like I said, that you've got about a minimum of 70% engagement. Alright guys, the last thing to consider with your new trigger in your pistol, anytime you replace any other components with your Glock pistol, like your connectors, different strikers, different striker springs, always make sure that you run through all of the safety tests with that to make sure that everything functions properly. Different connectors from different manufacturers are going to give you different trigger pulls. They're going to give you different reset points. So always make sure that you take that into consideration when you're replacing parts with your Glock pistol. Thanks and enjoy your new trigger.